Sony is apparently very interested in acquiring new developers.
So which of these developers may become brand new first-party entities?
Hot take!
A lot of people have been talking about the fact that Sony should be buying more video game companies, and it looks like they might be in the market to do so.
That's right, Shane. During Sony's second quarterly earnings call, EVP and CFO, let's see if I can get this right, Hiroki Totoki, I believe that is his name, said that Sony is open to further studio acquisitions, saying that they recognize that their brand strength lies in first-party content and IP. This kind of makes sense. We've heard about Microsoft going around and gobbling up studios. We heard
Everyone they can, really, yeah.
Yeah, we had heard about Double Fine Games, as well as just about, I don't know.
Obsidian? I mean, it was a lot.
Oh, yeah, Obsidian, too. I totally forgot about that.
They really, like, Microsoft went out there and just started buying everyone they could see. Like, they just went to E3 and went, you, the one with the bucket over there. You're making games now. Like, they literally did it. They bought everyone they could.
So I guess apparently a CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment as well, Jim Ryan, had said earlier this year that he also wanted to grow sort of first-party development capabilities for Sony. So yeah, I guess everyone is looking at each other. Maybe they were looking at what Microsoft was doing and saying, hey, if they're doing that, maybe we should be investing in other developers as well. So Sony did wind up grabbing a developer up, a developer that made a very great game that sold about 13.2 million units, Insomniac. Insomniac had developed, I don't know, a little title you may have heard of called Spider-Man, as well as Ratchet and Clank and the Resistance series as well.
That's right.
So that was maybe what could be the first step in their buying up everyone for Sony to be a first-party studio.
I mean, that's really it. Everyone is talking about the idea of the future, and we've talked about this on the show a bunch of times, that the future of video games aren't really in the consoles, aren't really in the services, they're in owning the content. You want to be a content king.
You can have any hardware or platform that you want, but if you don't have people making compelling experiences for those platforms, then why are people going to jump on board? So has it really worked out for Sony thus far with its first-party studios? What do you think?
Well, I mean, let's be fair. Sony does own quite a few first-party studios, and many of the best games available in this generation happen to be Sony exclusives.
Guerrilla had, they were working on Killzone, and then they made a huge, awesome game I've still yet to play, but you tell me to play all the time, Horizon, right?
Zero Dawn. It's really good, folks.
Well, yes. Naughty Dog, of course. We got your Crash Bandicoots way back in the day, but more recently, they're, of course, known for the Uncharted series and The Last of Us. We have Santa Monica with God of War, Sucker Punch.
Just God of War was insane, too, right? Like, it's one of those things where you think that franchise is dead, and they're like, nope, life! And then it just came back.
So, it's a lot of these first-party titles that have been showing that they have made the PlayStation 4, I believe, what it is today. It is, like you have been talking about recently with Jay, it is a platform that is just selling like hotcakes, right?
Yeah, it's really crazy. Folks, if you don't know this, most recent stats place the PlayStation 4 as the second best-selling console of all time, surpassing the Wii. That's nuts.
Yes.
I mean, we're getting, it's a little bit far away from the PlayStation 2, but basically, we can tell you right up front, you gotta worry about Sony getting as many, or Sony's got to worry about getting as many developers in their pocket as they can to prevent those games from going anywhere else.
That's right, yeah. So them sort of getting a very, very, very strong first-party development scene makes sense. So today we're just going to quickly talk about a few of the developers that we think that they could maybe pick up. Maybe it would be useful not just for Sony to sell more PlayStation 5s, but also to the developer who could possibly get a little extra money to develop the dream game that they've always wanted to make.
Yes, and look, we're going to start this one up with something that's fairly obvious.
What?
Even though Kojima Productions is going to be releasing a brand new game called Death Stranding, the very first game, it is still an exclusive on the PlayStation 4 for console releases. It will be on the PC, but if Sony was really looking at the market and seeing how many people are actually excited about this game, I'd probably pick them up.
Yeah, Kojima Productions is almost kind of sort of I guess, for the lack of a better term, in the pocket of Sony as
Yeah.
is, because not only did Sony kick over a bunch of dough to see Death Stranding become a thing, but the Kojima Productions also spoke with, of course, the first-party developers, Guerrilla Games, to get the Decima engine, right?
That's right.
So it kind of, yeah, they're already sort of embedded with Sony there. Maybe Sony is looking at Kojima Productions and Death Stranding and kind of seeing how things play out thus far. A lot of people are excited about this game, but maybe whether or not Sony will actually pick them up depends on how it's critically viewed and how many of the units actually sell.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, I gotta say that if this were to be announced, if this were to actually happen, it likely will happen after Kojima Productions has proven themselves as a powerful entity. I think you're right.
Yep.
I don't believe Sony would make the announcement now. If they made the announcement, to be honest, if they were to make the announcement now, before the game comes out, that's going to make everyone believe that no matter what happens, this game is going to be good. And I think that would be a very good marketing move on their behalf for the people that care about things.
Sure.
But I think the majority of gamers out there don't really care about who actually owns the companies. They just care about where they got to go to play the game, right? And with this game specifically, it's so wild, it's so crazy. It's not being marketed as an FPS strategy, whatever. It's being marketed as a new genre called Strands.
Stranding genre.
Nobody knows enough about this game.
What
really.
if the Stranding genre, it got its foothold on the PlayStation platform, and a lot of the Stranding games were there? If you want to play Stranding games, you got to go to the PlayStation 5, right? That could be big money for them.
It could be a big thing. I know it sounds crazy, but whatever this game design is, we really don't know enough about it. It could foster a new development of companies trying to kind of copycat what's going on there. I don't know if that's going to be the case. I don't think we got another Minecraft on our hands, but I do believe we have a game that a lot of people specifically went out to buy PlayStation 4s to buy this one game alone.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, how many special edition PlayStation 4s are there that specifically look like the branding of that game? There are not that many, but there is a Death Stranding version of the console with a baby in the controller. Not really, but you know what I mean? It was a weird one.
You're not selling me, man.
No. But it's strange.
Yeah.
I think people care about it. I think it would be a smart move for them to get it.
Okay, let's move on to another developer that we'd like to see maybe brought over, or that makes sense that Sony kind of picks them up. It's Blue Point Games. Now, Blue Point Games, a lot of people know them more recently for the Shadow of the Colossus remake.
That is correct.
Which you can vouch for.
Oh, yeah. It's
right?
good.
We
It's
can
really
vouch
good.
for.
Yeah.
Beautiful. It's a great sort of reimagining of the original title. Blue Point Games has dabbled. They are kind of the remaster people that are just starting to become a studio that a lot of people are talking about. They had worked on remasters. They did a little work, I believe, on the Metal Gear Solid HD collection.
Yep.
They did the original Ico and Shadow of the Colossus remasters originally for the PS3, and also a title I really love, the remaster of Gravity Rush on the PS4 as well. They've proven that they can do some pretty great stuff. They've gotten like critical acclaim. Rumor is that they're currently working on Demon Souls.
I could believe
a
that.
remake of that, and that would be pretty awesome too. If their titles were very much Sony specific going into the future, that would be huge. They already are very heavily Sony centric.
Yes.
Yeah.
I honestly believe that when it comes to Blue Point, a lot of you out there are probably thinking, why would you need a remaster studio? You see, the Shadow of the Colossus that was released on PlayStation 3 along with Ico, those were just basically ports of the older version of the game on PlayStation 2 brought over to work better on that hardware. But when it came to the Shadow of the Colossus remake on the PlayStation 4, they proved themselves as not only capable recreators of games, but being capable of taking that original idea, that original concept, and making it work with modern techniques. That's not easy to do. You can lose a ton of games in translation that way, and you and I have both played tons of remasters and reboots that totally miss the point. These guys figured it out. They know how to get the essence of that game and bring it on over, and that's a very important thing that not many game companies know how to do.
Yeah, I mean, they could go off on their own and possibly make their own sort of IP. They haven't proven necessarily that they can do that, but even if Sony just viewed them as those are our remaster guys, I would even argue that nowadays remasters are even more important than ever, because we're seeing a lot of great things like Crash Bandicoot and Spyro are coming back. A lot of great, like a lot of people want to see this possible Demon Souls remaster or remake. Because just people are embracing older games. We're talking about it more and more with backwards compatibility and things. Remasters are super important. Remakes are important.
Yes. The truth of the matter is, folks, whether you know it or not, there's a lot of games from the past that simply don't work that well anymore.
Yeah. Hey, Resident Evil 2.
That's a great example.
A great remake.
Resident Evil 2 is a fantastic remake, right? It doesn't replace what the original is, but it is becoming harder to go back and dive and play those older games over and over and over. So to get those games from the past and tweak them and fix them to work on modern systems is a very powerful, very interesting concept.
A lot of money.
And Bluepoint is one of the companies that really knows how to make it work.
A lot of money there. So Sony probably recognizes that. Another company that I'm very... Yeah, I love...
I know you do.
I love From Software. From Software is awesome. Sekiro, I believe, it was multi-plat. A lot of the Souls games are on several different platforms, but From Software did have a lot of titles that were developed specifically for Sony platforms, going all the way back. If you remember the Armored Core series, or if you remember like King's Field, and stuff, and of course Demon's Souls, which I just mentioned, of course, was an exclusive to the PS3. They've dealt with Sony for super duper long time. From Software, a lot of people weren't talking about them for a super long time, though they were trying. They were the little engine that could. Now,
with the Souls games in North America, people really started paying attention a lot. I mean, there was other games, right? They have created a couple games on the PlayStation 1 that you may know about, but it really was the latest Souls series that blew them up and made them become like a force to be reckoned with.
Right. So now, whenever From Software talks about anything that they're creating, a lot of people are listening, right? If Sony was wise, they'd be like, well, sounds like everyone's super excited about anything From Software seems to be developing these days. Let's pick them up. If they're exclusive to our platform, a lot of people would jump directly. Imagine that. Even if it isn't a Souls title necessarily, because I know that the head, the main director, does not necessarily want to go with another Souls game. Even if it's just another title that's like a Bloodborne, another Bloodborne, which is kind of a Souls-esque. Bloodborne 2, people would go crazy. And that was specific to Sony as well.
Do you know what From Software actually reminds me of? A long time ago, back when Sony was creating the original PlayStation hardware and they're trying to get people on, they picked up Psygnosis. And Psygnosis reminds me so much of From Software. They've got these edgy, weird games, crazy cool visuals, neat gaming concepts. Some are weird, some people don't pick them up, and the other ones people really like. It's that same kind of idea. And I think Sony coming into the PlayStation 5 needs something weird, and I think that is what From Software can be.
Yeah, so I think it makes sense. It very much does. The next studio I wanted to mention is one that maybe not as many people know that much about, but I feel like this is a situation where the studio itself, the developers could really benefit from having the backing of Sony proper. Housemarque has been making titles, or had been making titles specifically to Sony's platforms for a while. Like Resogun kicked off this generation in a big way. Resogun was really great. They also developed games like Super Stardust and other titles that they're kind of throwback arcade titles.
That's what they are. They're arcade-like games.
Yeah, looking towards the future. Using these new machines in interesting ways and stuff. But the problem is that they were having problems. I think a lot of it was advertising issues. They were having problems getting those games out to people. They didn't have that much of a push. So
they're not making bad games.
Yes.
This is one of those key aspects. You want to get in there when they're kind of working on really good stuff. Like a great example of this, what Microsoft did with Obsidian. Obsidian makes good games, but they're having trouble selling their games. What do? You buy them, give them a budget, then Outer Worlds, right? See, that's the cool stuff. With what Housemarque has done in the past, they've proven that they are capable of making really fun, interesting arcade games, or arcade-style games. Yeah. And they could do a lot more. That's just something that's really in their wheelhouse.
Yes.
And to have those games be exclusives to the PlayStation 5 would be a killer.
Exactly. I think Housemarque needs a little help beefing up what they are. It's a relatively small studio. It's like 70 people or so that are making these pretty expansive games. So that'd be really neat to see. Right now, they're developing it like a battle royale title, just because no one was picking up their games. They wanted to shift to what they thought people want today. But I feel like they should try bringing back those older sort of arcade-ish experiences.
I agree. The way I see this is when we're looking at subscription services for video games, we're seeing a lot of games that can be included for free on those subscription services. Where Microsoft literally just gave away Outer Worlds on Xbox Game Pass, which is how I'm playing it right now. When it comes to other companies like Nintendo, they did Tetris 99, right? Housemarque could be the company that makes those same kind of games, small, fun, bite-sized games, like any of those, like just tiny little arcade experiences, and those are the ones that are given away for free. If they're working on Battle Royale, that means they're probably thinking about large people playing in one single game world. And if they were capable of doing that with really cool arcade-style games, I think it'd have a huge impact, especially if they're included in a bundle pack with just like your PlayStation Plus service.
Now, I know you have one sort of developer or subsidiary, I should say, that you wanted to talk about today, and
yes,
you seem to be like brimming with excitement. What exactly was it that you wanted to...
Hear me now, people of the internet. I say this not as a foreboding event to happen, but I just think it'd be cool. Sega, why doesn't Sony partner or buy Sega? I think it should happen.
Yeah, now Sega is not, it's not just like, oh, it's a developer. It's like, it's a lot of things, right? They produce games, they develop games. Yeah. And they're outside of the world of gaming as well. Yeah. What else do they do?
Sega, as many of you may not even know, Sega owns some hotels, some weird theme parks, travel destination things. They own a variety of other things because of their partnership with Sammy, where they also produce like pachinko machines. Sega has their hands in a lot of things, arcades and stuff like that. They really do. It's weird, but if Sony were to get in bed with these folks and start making games, it's strange, but it makes so much sense to me. Many of the biggest Sega franchises seem to be exclusive right now to the Sony platforms. Even though we just saw Yakuza get released on PC recently, most of the Yakuza games are just primarily only on Sony platforms. And that's it. It's a match made. When you think about the Persona games, Sega owns Atlas. Persona is one of those games that seems to just exist on that. I know that at the time when I'm saying this, it seems like because a lot of those games are already exclusive on the PlayStation, why would Sony want to get them? Because Persona just made a bit of a jump onto the Switch. And for Sony, that's probably not the greatest thing. They probably want Persona to be treated as a Sony property. They probably want Yakuza to be treated as a Sony property.
Yeah, there's been a lot of Atlas muscle into the like Sony platforms, but we can't forget that they've had more of a home on handhelds for like Nintendo. Atlas had developed so many games and published so many games on handhelds. If all of that muscle was placed securely into what is Sony's their next platform,
that's right.
Woo! That could be really, really wild, because when it comes to JRPGs, Atlas is like across the board. That's the developer you want to go with, or there's just a lot of great stuff coming out of there.
And if we're just talking about the combination of all these companies being purchased, how about some old Sega IPs getting remade by Bluepoint? See what I'm saying? Yeah, all this stuff kind of works together, right?
Oh, you know what I'd really love? Okay, it was a marriage of Sega and I believe Platinum. That did. Oh, Platinum would be a good get too.
Oh yes.
But Vanquish.
Yes.
I would love Bluepoint Games to remake Vanquish for the PS5 with your sliding on your knees, and just shooting all the robots.
It would be fun, right?
Yeah.
Look, there are a lot of companies out there like Quantum Dream and a lot of other ones that could be purchased and done and doing things like that too. Yeah. But I think what it really comes down to is these ones seem to be the most interesting to us. Yeah. And we have seen hints that they really do seem to have a lot more success on Sony platforms if they're making games on any other platform.
Yeah. Or at least there's already a relationship there with many of these cases.
Absolutely. Yeah. Look, it's a stretch. We don't really know what game companies are going to be purchased, but if Sony is saying publicly that they're willing on doing it, that means two things. They want their investors to know that cool things might be happening in the future, and they want some game companies out there knowing we got the money and we're willing to go down.
Yeah, we're looking.
Yeah. So, folks, what companies do you think could be purchased by Sony, and which ones would you be excited to see purchased? And not one of you should say Nintendo, because that's never going to happen. And I know you're typing it. Stop. Just say something else.
Supermassive, maybe? Until Dawn, that's a little more in their grab bag. But anyway, let us know what you think in the comments below.